There's an awful lot of expertise to be found on YouTube, isn't there? Have you noticed that? There is so many guys on YouTube that are just lighting the world on fire. They're the best here. They're like, I don't know if you ever watch wrestling. There's a guy, Bret the Hitman Hart, best there is, best there was, best there will ever be. There are so much of them guys on YouTube that are working on cars. Holy jumping jihad. It's crazy. And you know, a funny thing that I see is I watch quite a bit. Well, maybe not quite a bit. I watch enough. I watch enough YouTube. And I watch enough of these guys. I don't always watch the whole thing because sometimes I just think, what's the matter with you? But I watch enough of them that these guys that are just amazing, and they'll tell you how amazing they are. They don't mind telling you at all how amazing they are. There's so many of these guys that are the best in the world. It's crazy how many of them there are. Did I say that already? That is the extent of my disbelief in how good these guys are. Disbelief. So much of what they tell you is stupid. It's crazy. Is it crazy, right? I mean, they will tell you that they're doing a high-end paint job on a high-end car, and they're sanding the third or fourth paint job that's already on that car, and then they're smearing Bondo over top of that paint, and then they're priming it, and then they're telling you that the first time you block it, your primer that you just put on after you did your body work, well, the first time you block it, that's when you're going to find out your highs and low spots and how much more body work you got to do. Well, what the hell sense does that make? And these are the guys telling you to watch their videos because they're the shit. They got what's going on. It just don't make no damn sense. Either that or they will strip a car down to bare steel, and then the first thing they'll do is they'll put some epoxy primer on it, and then they'll put a couple of coats of primer surfacer on it, and then the same thing, they'll start blocking it, and they'll show you the video of them blocking it, and they'll guide coat it and all that shit before they block it, which don't make no sense to me because when they start sanding their primer and they knock that guide coat off the top, so you see the gray, then you see all the black valleys in it, that shows you how stupid they are. Because you got to fix all that shit. You're supposed to do that before you prime it, aren't you? That's what I was always told. That's how I was trained. That's what the whole trade is based on. It's a trade. It's like carpentry. It's like plumbing. Working on cars, doing this shit. People say that this is an art form, and all us guys that do this stuff are artists, and we should just be walking around with a scepter and a crown. Bullshit. This is a learned trade. If you have any kind of hand-to-eye coordination, you can do this shit. You can learn the basics of it, and once you learn the basics of it, well, you can do it. And you know what? I know guys that don't really have hand-eye coordination, and they should suck at what they do, but they figured out techniques to be able to do it. I know a fella that he can't feel shit through his hands. Couldn't feel a double D in a wool sweater. You know what he does when he's doing body work? He's got two different colors of hardener, the red hardener for the body filler and the blue hardener for the body filler. So when he does some body work, he'll use one color of filler and he'll sand her down. He'll feel it. He doesn't know what he's feeling. So then he'll put another application of filler over top, sometimes just a light one. You know, if he kind of visually can tell that he's almost there, he'll use a different color of hardener in that second layer of filler. So then when he's sanding through, if he's got some real high spots in his blue filler, well, the pink filler is going to come through, right? And if it's all stays blue, well, he's probably low and needs to, you know what I'm saying to you? But he uses a visual to see the different colors. I mean, there's lots of ways around it. But all these pros, it's just crazy. Holy hell, I'm saying crazy a lot. But it's just don't make no damn sense, the information and the tips and the tricks and the way that they're telling you that you got to do it. There's a guy, I've watched a few of his videos, but I can't stand listening to him anymore. His initials are BB. I won't say any more about it. But this dude spends half his videos telling you that he's the best that ever walked the planet doing this shit. And I've watched some of his videos, and I've seen guys that are 14 years old in high school doing work that made more sense and probably netted a better end result than what he does. I mean, there's a difference. You don't put fillers and stuff over top of paints. And it's not because it won't stick. It's not because it'll peel. Because it will stick and it won't peel. The problem is your difference in materials when it comes to expansion and contraction. And all these guys, they don't get that shit. You can't put a polyester over top of a urethane, over top of a lacquer, and then huck her outside in 100-degree sun wherever you live, in Texas, in Arizona, in Alaska, in wherever the hell you live, in Russia, and not expect shit to start happening in that paint job, because everything expands and contracts at a different rate. That's where you get your failures from. Your failure doesn't come because shit's going to let go. I mean, on lacquer, shit lets go. That's just the way it goes, because it's lacquer. That's why they don't use lacquer anymore, because it's a very unstable product to use. But anything that has a catalyst in it or a hardener in it, that's a stable product. But like I said, that is the reason why you don't stack all the different materials up. Because when you throw her out in the sunshine, that's when you get your shrinking and your swelling and all that shit, because everything's moving at different rates in the heat, and it cools down at different rates. That's why you don't do it. But these guys, you see them, holy shit balls, you see them, they take something and they scuff up their paint, and they lay a bunch of filler over it, then they put some primer on it, then they put some more filler over top of that, and then they put some primer on it, and by the time you're done, it looks like the bank of the River Nile with all your different layers, you know, where you can tell what happened in 1432 and what happened in 1698 and what happened in 1845. Well, it ain't them dates. It's what happened on Wednesday, and then it's what happened on Friday, and it's what he did on Saturday morning. That's the layers you're seeing, and it's stupid. I don't buy into none of that. If you watch any of my videos where I do stuff start to finish, I start with bare steel. Then you weld your bare steel up and cut and grind it. I do not put epoxy down underneath my fillers, because once you put all your other products on top, you're sealing that steel underneath. So for the amount of time that steel is bare, and once you put your filler on, it's not bare anymore. I mean, like I epoxy over top of it before it's primed. Bare steel, filler work, epoxy primer, primer surfacer. Sand out the primer surfacer. Maybe touch up a little bit of primer surfacer here and there. I don't prime everything 5 times because I don't need to. You just don't need to. If you didn't do your work, then yeah, you got to prime it, then you got to block it, then you got to prime it, then you got to block it, then you got to prime it, then you got to block it. You should have done better body work in the first place. I've also heard that they say that, oh, this is a good one. The heat created from the body filler will cause condensation between the body filler and the steel, and that will cause rust between the filler and the steel. Whose body filler goes on so damn hot that it's sweating? I ain't never seen that before, ever. The only thing I've seen come close to that is I've seen SMC resin mixed up to do an SMC repair, which is like fiberglass, but it ain't. Never mind, that's a whole different thing. But to make a successful, SMC stands for sheet mold compound. It's what a lot of Corvettes, a lot of newer stuff's made out of. Doesn't matter. You got to use a lot of catalyst in SMC resin to get it to harden up in under a week. So I have seen the shit smoking, because there's so much catalyst that it does get hot enough that it does start smoking. But that's completely different than a polyester body filler. I mean, I can't even believe that. I think somebody's even commented on one of my videos on how you have to do that, because it's proven that the heat causes condensation between the filler and the metal. Well, if that's the case, then it'll blister. I mean, it'll be hanging right off of there. You can walk up and flick your repair off of there. So I don't buy that one either. I mean, fillers have been made since, when did they start making fillers? In the 50s? In the 40s? I don't know. I mean, they used lead at first. Why doesn't lead come off? You melt lead and put it on. If that's the case, would the lead not sweat and fall off of there? It's painful. It really is painful. Autobody heroes. I wish I was one. I guess what I'm saying is, don't fall for it. When you watch this stuff and you see these guys and they're talking their talk, I don't know, don't fall for it. If something looks too easy and too good to be true, and if somebody spends more time telling you how good they are at what they're doing than they spend doing it, well, they're trying to convince you, aren't they? They're selling it, and they're selling hard. If they got to sell, They ain't doing it, right? It just ain't there. And seldom with these guys do you see revealing footage of their final product. I did start clipping onto a couple of little videos that some guy done. I think he's in Texas. And he's this little ugly, bald, fat dude. And I mean, he is an asshole. He comes across as an asshole, and I think that he probably is an asshole. But he's in Texas somewhere, and I don't know what's happened in his life, but he's another guy that says how good he is, but not as much. But the thing with him is I've watched and listened to a couple, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Something's happened to him in his life, though, that he is painting cars literally in a wooden garden shed outside, and it is dreadfully obvious in watching his videos that he's inside of a garden shed outside, and he don't wear a mask. He puts a bandana on over on his noggin. I guess he doesn't get overspray on his chrome dome, but he don't wear a mask or nothing, and he paints in his garden shed with the doors wide open. But when he's being bitchy and explaining things, he does know what he's talking about the chemical aspects of the paints, about the dry times, about all that kind of stuff, about what he's doing, about how to apply the products, everything else. But I mean, after he's done, he's got grasshoppers jumping out of his paint and the whole bit, because it's brutal. So I don't know what's happened to this fella that he's painting in a garden shed, but he comes up with an awful lot of cars to paint. I guess that's pretty much it. I was just sanding this humpity hump spelt with a hump, for the floor on the GMC, because it had there was a hole in it for a standard transmission at some point in its life. So we're putting one in it. It has to have a high hump for the transmission going in it. Doesn't matter. Had to grind the shit out of the holes because none of the holes line up with the factory bolt holes. But anyways, I was sitting there sanding the inside of this before I put it on, because it's easier to sand it in my lap than it is stretching out across the floor of the truck. And I just got to thinking, about how many guys have said with something like this, you don't even need to sand this primer that's on it, because your paint will just stick to it magically. So yeah, I just thought I would have a little rant about all the Autobody magicians that there are on YouTube. If you watch this to the end, I don't know if you got anything out of that or not, but I know I feel better.